It is exactly 20 years since the attacks on the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in the United States in what turned out to be one of the most traumatic events of the century. The 9/11 attacks of 2001 have shaped America and the world ever since. 4 planes used as giant guided missiles were hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists into landmark buildings, the Twin Towers in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington. 2,977 people were killed. More than 6,000 were injured, and today, 20 years later, Americans are still coming to terms with the loss of their loved ones. The U.S. President Joe Biden has delivered an impassioned appeal for the nation to set aside its differences and reclaim the spirit of cooperation that sprang up in the days following the atrocities.
Of the 2,977 people from more than 90 nations killed on September 11th, 2001 in New York City, Arlington, Virginia, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and the 1,000 more who were injured. America and the world commemorate you and your loved ones, the pieces of your soul. We honor all those who risked and gave their lives in the minutes, hours, months, and years afterwards. The firefighters, police officers, EMTs and construction workers, and doctors and nurses, faith leaders, service members, veterans, and all of the everyday people who gave their all to rescue, recover, and rebuild. But it's so hard, whether it's the first year or the 20th. Children have grown up without parents, and parents have suffered without children. Husbands and wives have had to find ways forward without their partners in their life with them. Brothers and sisters, uncles and...
And for all the updates on the 9/11 remembrance, our correspondent Ian Phillips joins us live from New York. Ian, thank you so much for being here. And of course, amazing work you've been doing all day, corresponding and giving us all the latest updates concerning the commemoration of 9/11. But Ian, one message that stands out from all of the messages we've seen today, from former President George W. Bush to Vice President Kamala Harris and even the President Joe Biden, is a message of unity. Let's talk about why this is really important at this time.
That's correct. That was one of the main themes resonating throughout the commemorations today in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. It touches on the issue at the heart of American society at the moment, which is real polarization, both politically and at societal level. It's real. President George W. Bush, who obviously was in office on 9/11, also spoke about the hatred, the fear, and the resentment that seems to be around U.S. politics today. We saw in the U.S. election last year that the country is deeply polarized, deeply split on so many issues. So today, America wanted to come together. They wanted to rally around this extremely painful and poignant day and put aside politics for a day. But it's difficult. The country truly is polarized. People disagree on many issues, and many don't want to hear other opinions. So that really was what President Joe Biden was referring to, his vice president as well, and others, that America has to move on. This was a 20-year war, the longest in American history. It cost the lives of thousands of people. It cost trillions of dollars. And many people disagree on whether it was worth it. And of course, coming today, on the same day that the Taliban raised their flag over the Afghan presidential palace, really resonated. A lot of people are asking, was it worth it? What did we achieve? And when you look back at 9/11, it wasn't just the Afghanistan war, it was the Iraq war, and much geopolitical division and turmoil that came as a result of that.
Yes, indeed, Ian. But what some people are looking at is that 20 years, after the 9/11, 20 years in Afghanistan, maybe there should have been some kind of healing balms, to truly unite the people. Has there been anything really like that? I mean, bringing Americans together and putting the scourge of yesterday behind them? Ian?
Well, President Joe Biden campaigned and believed that he should pull troops out of Afghanistan. The deal was done by Donald Trump, but Joe Biden stuck with it. That reflected in many ways the deep unpopularity of the war. This was, again, 20 years in the making. That's a tremendous amount of time with tremendous loss. So, yes, some people have been in deep reflection today, remembering what happened, but it's difficult to say whether that's purely at the national level. There is a big division here over the merits of the war, about the future of US foreign policy. Should America be involved in these wars? Will there be another war like it? Will there be the need for a global policeman, the sole superpower in recent decades, to intervene like this at such cost? 9/11, let's remember, was a moment when people really did come together in America, in New York. New York was transformed in the tragedy. I lived here. You could feel it on the subway. You could feel it walking the streets. People really came together. The rest of the world, including people who were sworn enemies of the US, really stood side by side with America. But there is a real feeling here and in the rest of the world that a lot of that goodwill was squandered by some of the subsequent decisions, which were truly epoch-making. The Iraq War, as we discussed, the Afghanistan War, obviously, many of the atrocities in Abu Ghraib, the CIA black ops sites. There has been so many aftershocks and so many consequences of 9/11 geopolitically, that even though 20 years have passed, perhaps the nation hasn't really truly come to terms with it all yet, because there's been so much to digest.
And Ian, as we get ready to wrap up this conversation, one thing that stood out for a lot of people, especially on social media, that's what they're hammering on, is the fact that the immediate past president, Donald Trump, was not in any of the celebrations. But give us an overview as to what happened today as Americans marked that terrible incident that happened some 20 years ago. Ian?
Trump visited a police station, NYPD, and a firehouse, and spoke a little, hinted that there might even be a 2024 candidacy on his part. But most people put politics to one side today. You saw 3 former presidents, one current and 2 former, here in New York, standing side by side in another show of unity, and trying to look forward in a sort of solidarity sort of perspective. But for the most part, politics was put to one side today. This was a day to remember, to reflect. You could feel the heaviness in the air in New York. Parts of the city, downtown New York, around the World Trade Center, were cut off. It was very difficult to get access. But as the day progressed, a lot of people started milling around the footprint where the towers used to be, just to my right here below, and it was really a day for reflection and soul searching, less politics.
Ian, thanks for your summation there of the activities commemorating the 20th anniversary of 9/11.